Strength and compassion, two words that are contradictory, two virtues that are not. For both of these virtues were to be found in the heart of one man born on December 31st, 1880, in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. One man who would rise to the highest rank in military service. One man who would receive the Nobel Prize for Peace. One man who saw firsthand the devastation of 2 world wars and said, "Never again." One man, George Calais Marshall. From the smoldering ashes of World War I rose an incarnation of evil that would lead the world into yet another catastrophic war. Soon the world would watch in shock, disbelief, and horror as the fragile peace that was established after the First World War crumbled into chaos. One by one, the nations of Europe fell, until only Russia and Great Britain remained. As Italy and Japan joined forces with Germany, Hitler signed a non-aggression pact with Stalin, a pact that he never intended to honor. When Hitler turned his sights on Great Britain, however, he found a level of resistance he did not expect. But as the strong nation held her ground, she looked to the West for help. Across the Atlantic, the United States was basking in the warm glow of isolationism, but General George Marshall knew that war was on the horizon. Then, on December 7th, 1941, tensions between the United States and Japan ignited into a sudden and brutal attack on Pearl Harbor. There was probably no way we could have been prepared for such an unexpected and unlikely attack, but nothing could have been more of an eye-opener for the American people, making them ever so determined to redeem their losses and strive together to obtain absolute and final victory. The sleeping giant had indeed been awakened. With the greatest assemblage of military leaders in history, the United States plunged into the war with all its military, industrial, and human resources. Several early defeats were proof that this would be a long and hard-fought struggle. But soon, General George Patton took command of U.S. troops in Africa and raised the standards for military bearing and procedures, while General Marshall intensified combat training. Soon the American forces were winning battles and contributing to the Allied efforts to turn the tide of the war. When the time came to launch a massive invasion of Western Europe, the Allied leaders devised a brilliant plan of strategy and deception that would pave the way for successful landings on the Normandy beaches. On June 6, 1944, General Dwight D. Eisenhower gave the order to launch the invasion of France, forever to be known as D-Day. But the price for D-Day was high. Thousands of brave men gave their lives on those beaches and the hedgerows just beyond. But despite heavy losses, a massive fighting force had infiltrated heavily fortified German defenses, and a giant stride towards winning the war had been taken. As Allied forces moved towards Paris, General George Patton took command of the 3rd U.S. Army and pushed through to France and on towards Germany at record pace. Despite a last-ditch, desperate counteroffensive by the German army in the Ardennes, Allied victory was inevitable. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur and Admirals Chester Nimitz and William Bull Halsey had regained much of the territory taken by Japan following the attack on Pearl Harbor. Then in June of 1942, off the Midway Islands, U.S. naval forces won a decisive victory, destroying over half the Japanese carrier fleet in a matter of minutes, and shifted the tide of the war. U.S. Army and Marine units continued their island-hopping campaign across the South Pacific until General MacArthur returned to the Philippines in triumph. On August 14, 1945, Japan surrendered, and in the streets of the United States and everywhere throughout the free world echoed one glorious and all-encompassing word: victory! Although the Allied victory was total and unquestioned, the complexities of World War II left George Marshall, now U.S. Secretary of State, with several questions to ponder. Where is the line between victory and vengeance, between liberator and conqueror? And most importantly, how do we prevent such horrific calamity from ever happening again? After much thought and reflection, with the strong support from President Truman, George Marshall emerged with his answer: the European Recovery Plan, which would become known as the Marshall Plan. This bold new approach to post-war policy was something the world had never seen before. Economic aid to rebuild war-torn nations, even the ones we had just defeated. By reaching out a helping hand to those countries in need, perhaps they would be less likely to wage war on their neighbors. Perhaps the world would be a safer and better place if all nations were invited to find their place in a new world and share the blessings of peace and prosperity. And how long should we reach out with this helping hand? How long should we show compassion towards all nations, friend and foe, one reporter asked? And from the voice of a great warrior, from the heart of a true hero, came these words, "Till men no longer die in war."